You're listening to Frankly Speaking Sports with Larry Frank on Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to Frankly Speaking Sports with Larry Frank.
Another opportunity here, two aboard, nobody out.
And a shot off the right side back into the corner. Here comes Smith to tie it. Martinez hitting third. Linares will wave him home. Rays are going to win it. Safe at the plate. And the Rays score two in the 10th. On the shot up the right side by Kiermaier, it's a 6-5 final.
And Michael Perez, now doing the catching, will come on for his first at bat. And a base hit into right field. Rays are going to win it. Lau scores on the single into right by Michael Perez. It's a 4-3 Rays victory, and they take 3 of 4 from New York. And Kevin Kiermaier will come off the Rays bench to bat for Brauso. And a base hit lined into left. That drops in front of Gurriel Jr., and the Rays are going to win it. Margot scores, and the Rays win in 10. It's a 2-1 final. Kiermaier on the first pitch walks it off, and the Rays win in 10. Brandon Lau entered as a pinch hitter in the 8th. Here it is. And a fly ball back into center field. That's going to be caught by Marte. No chance. The tag at third. Phillips scores, and the Rays win it in 10. Sacrifice fly to center off the bat of Brandon Lau. Phillips scores from third, and the Rays with 2 in the bottom of the 10th win this one 5-4.
It's 2 on with 2 out, and the Rays are going to ask for the biggest hit in the life of Brett Phillips. Jansen, that is into center field. Here comes Kiermaier. Phillips has tied the game. Arose Arena coming around. Throw home. Now he stumbles, but the ball gets away. Tampa Bay wins it. Brett Phillips, Game 4 hero.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Frankly Speaking Sports on this beautiful Monday evening. And what a great show we have for you today. In about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, we're going to have the great Neil Solondz, pre- and post-game host for the Tampa Bay Rays, will be joining us live right here in Franklin Speaking Sports Studio. What a great interview. We're going to talk to him about the upcoming Tampa Bay Rays season, some of the acquisitions they had there in the offseason, and some of the people they had lost. Also, we're going to have some Buccaneer talk, some Lightning talk as well. For those of you that are, following the Lightning right now, I just want to make sure that it hasn't updated. It was 5-4 at the end of 2 periods for the Lightning. They are losing. I believe Tyler Johnson had a goal. Going to tell you who else here. It looks like Volkov has 2 goals. Tyler Johnson has 1. Stamkos has another. So 4 goals for the Lightning. They're trailing 5-4. End of the second period. But before we get into the Rays, before we get into the Lightning, some very, very, very sad news if you have not heard out of the Tampa Bay area today. And let me see if I can find it right here. Right. But if you haven't heard yet, unfortunate passing of Vincent Jackson, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He was found dead today at a Homewood Suites in Brandon, Florida. He was not alive. He had passed away at the age of 38. So, just some really, really sad news. And this one, not that the other ones don't get me at all, but here's a young man that had everything going for him. He had his own restaurant, had his own business. He was very successful on the field, very successful off the field. And it just, bothers me to see a young man with so much more life to live just pass away like that. Now, we don't have any, cause right now. They said no trauma was involved, but just lots and lots of questions yet to be answered, which I'm sure we'll find out in the upcoming weeks. But in honor of Vincent Jackson, who has given so much glory to the Tampa Bay fans and to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we're going to go ahead and play this short video for you on remembering Vincent Jackson.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through. That I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way, from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Yes, rest in peace, Vincent Jackson. Just sad, sad news. And our prayers go out to his entire family. I know he has some kids. I know he has a wife. Just a terrible, terrible story here to start our show off with. For those of you that are Lightning fans, we do want to let you know that the Lightning are trailing now 6-4 in the third period. Vasilevsky is not in goal tonight. So hopefully they got pretty much a whole period left. Hopefully the Lightning can come back and go ahead and defeat the Panthers. Both these teams have played. This is the third game in like a 5-day span where each team has won. Each one has won a game. So this is a big, big game. Lightning on 10-2, 8-2 for the Panthers. So this is a big game to see who's going to be atop this conference. And right now, the Lightning are trailing 6-4. For those of you that are tuning in, if you can please go ahead, do me a favor. We have about 15 minutes And Neil Solondz, the pre- and post-game host for the Tampa Bay Rays, will be joining us live to discuss the upcoming season with the Tampa Bay Rays, also some of the acquisitions we had during the offseason. Go ahead, please share this to your timeline, share this to a friend. For those of you that want to try calling in the next 15 minutes, there is a call-in number if you want to talk about Vincent Jackson, what you remember, some of the great moments he provided for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or you want to talk anything sports or get us somewhere on track that you want to talk about, please go ahead. Give us a quick phone call. We will try to get to your phone call. We are going to talk now some Tampa Bay Rays. And, I'll tell you what, the more and more I look, and we talked about this last week, that the Rays are going to make some moves. They're still not done making moves. They're going to get some veteran presence with their pitching staff. What do? We knew they got already Chris Archer. They went out. They got Colin McClue. They went out. They got Rich Hill. So they continue to go ahead and make this this entire pitching staff even better, I think, than it possibly was last year. And a lot of people argue with me, how can it be better than last year? We lost Morton, we lost Snell. And I look at you, and not to offend any of the Tampa Bay Rays fan, but we lost Morton. Okay, Snell, everybody has this big thing and this big vision of Blake Snell being this unbelievable pitcher. And I don't want to take away what he did that one year back in 2018 when he was 21-5 with a 1.89 ERA. Blake Snell was an unbelievable Cy Young pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays. But if you take that 1 year out of the equation, Blake Snell has been nothing for the Tampa Bay Rays. Look at these statistics, folks. 2016, Blake Snell was 6-8 with a 3.54 ERA. 2017, 5 wins, 7 losses, 4.04 ERA. Of course, 2018, 21 wins, 5 losses. That's what we're talking about. 2019, 6 wins, 8 losses, 4.29 ERA. I know he was hurt a little bit. Last year, which was a weird year for all of us, he was 4-2 with a 3.24 ERA in that unbelievable game where all the discussion came about whether Kevin Cash should have pulled him or not in that game. But if you take the 21-5 record from Blake Snell out of the equation, folks, he was only a 21-25 pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays, under 500 as a pitcher. There was many times where we didn't know which Blake Snell was going to show up. But everybody puts this guy on a pedestal like he was Cy Young, or, he was an Oral Hershiser, or he was a Clayton Kershaw. He's not. He was 21-25. That's it as a pitcher besides that Cy Young. They did not lose a lot in Blake Snell. They lost maybe some potential in Blake Snell. And then if you really want to see what did they get back in return? Rich Hill. The thing with Rich Hill, who they just picked up, yes, he's 41 years old, and that would be very concerning for me from a stamina standpoint. But when you look at Rich Hill, look at these numbers. He's 67-44 over his career with a 3.79 ERA. Okay, let's go over the same years that we went over Blake Snell. Rich Hill, 2016, 12-5 with an amazing 2.12 ERA. 2017, 12-8 with a 3.32 ERA. 2018, 11-5 with a 3.65 ERA. 2019, 4 wins and a loss, 2.45 ERA. And 2020, he was 2-2 with a 3.03 ERA. When you put these two pitches together and you put them side by side, who would you rather have pitching for you if both were pitching? You'd rather Rich Hill. Rich Hill has won more games, is winning more games, has proven himself more. Now, the question, I know the difference in age, but other than that, there is no downside to having Rich Hill. Then we get Chris Archer back, who has struggled ever since he's left Tampa Bay. I'd love to see what Kyle Snyder can do with him. Then you get a guy named Colin McHugh, who basically can start or relieve and has been one of the winningest pitchers on the Houston Astros. So when you look at these guys, now you put in there Hill and McHugh, Archer. Let's not forget Michael Walker, who was an all-star pitcher just a couple of years ago with Glass now in Yarbrough. This is an unbelievable starting pitching staff with some depth. And we don't know about McKay. We don't know about Honeywell yet. So when you look at these guys and you look at this team, don't anyone tell me we lost Morton and Snell. From a depth standpoint, when you look at this team and you look at the Rays, it's incredible. It is incredible. They really did not lose anybody from that starting from a position team, and every single person at every single position in this lineup can actually knock the ball out of the ballpark. Now, there's going to be some questions. What do we do with Mike Broussard? What do we do with him? This guy has to get his playing time. What is going to happen? We're overloaded in the infield. We're overloaded in the outfield. And I said this, and, we'll get an opinion by Neil when he comes on in a little bit. But could Brett Phillips, be the odd person out, the World Series hero who won the game for the Tampa Bay Rays? Then you got to say, who would be the outfielder that's out? I still believe, guys, and I'm going to say this, there is still a possibility. Don't be surprised if before day one, opening day, that you see Kevin Kiermaier possibly traded if the right deal comes along. And I say that again, if the right deal comes along. You got to understand, Kiermaier is a 250 at best hitter. Yes, he has some defense. You can't deny the man is an unbelievable defender in the outfield. But when you look at this team, now you have Manuel Margot, who had an unbelievable season last year for the Rays, that has some speed as well, that can produce at the plate. You maybe put obviously a little less in on the defense, but you got to score some runs to win game. And the question's going to be now is, do you trade Kiermaier if you can get a top pitcher or another big bat? And that's going to be a key question, because now you got to figure out Susago, who did nothing last year. Yeah, he pounded 8 homers, but was not impressive. But give the guy some credit. He was coming over from a different country in the middle of COVID, and that could be very difficult on anyone. So let's go ahead and give him, a reprieve there. We'd love to see how he does, but in the outfield now, you're with Margot and Meadows and Arozarena. We said Margot. Then remember, you got people in the infield like Brousseau and Lau who can also play the outfield. Obviously, where Brett Phillips goes, I don't know, but this is a good issue to have. If you're Kevin Cash and you're looking at this lineup with pretty much G-Man at first, you got Lau at second. Everybody knows what he can do. You got Willie Adames, and then, of course, third base is going to be a battle between Wendell Diaz and Brousseau. Okay, catching is going to be between Mahia and Francisco Mahia, who they picked up in the Snell deal, and it's also going to be with Mike Zunino, who had a great postseason. When you go to the outfield, it has to be Arozarena. It's got to be Meadows in the corners if they're both healthy. The next question comes up, okay, is it going to be Margot or is it going to be Kiermaier if Kiermaier isn't traded? And then, of course, you got the DH position where it can be filled in with the Susagos, the Yandy Diaz's, the Brousseau, and some of these other players. If you play Wendell, and you can put Lau there or Meadows. So you do have a couple of different options there. But this is a team. And, when you look at this team, a lot of people are not giving this team enough credit. They're not even picking them anymore. And this is great. This is the team that destroyed the Yankees, 8 out of 10 or whatever it was last year, games. This is the team that won the American League East. This is the team that represented the American League in the World Series, and people are still not giving this team any credit where credit is due. Doesn't make sense, folks. Doesn't make sense how you cannot. And you know what? The Rays like this. The Rays like this stuff. As I read a message here, and Tommy, we want to welcome our good buddy. Eric, we want to welcome you. I got a couple of Facebook users on. I believe one of them is Donnie from Canada. And, Donnie's team, which, we're going to talk about in a little bit too when Neil comes on, is probably, those Toronto Blue Jays could be one of the toughest teams this year in that AL East. I mean, look at the people they're picking up. They picked up Springer is one of the guys they picked up. They got an unbelievable team already. The key with the Toronto Blue Jays is going to be their starting pitching staff. How good or how bad are they going to be? And one of our readers will go ahead and put this up is, are you surprised at the Universal DH? I don't like it, guys. I've never been a big fan. I think the Universal DH takes a lot of strategy out of the game. But on the second hand of that, I want to make sure everyone's clear on something. I believe the rules should be the same. If you have it in one league, it should be in the other league. Or if you don't have it in one league, you shouldn't have it in the other league. I believe in rules being the same. I am not a big fan of the DH. I am not a big fan of 7-inning doubleheaders. And heck no, I'm not a fan of putting a runner on second base in extra innings. I think they're doing everything they can to ruin the game of baseball, and they need to just keep the game being played the way it is. They already screwed up the game. It's not okay for players to get on juice, but it's okay for Major League Baseball to juice the baseball. So, it doesn't really make sense what we're doing here. We're knocking guys that were doing PEDs to get stronger, which had nothing to do with them making eye contact or being able to swing a bat. Yet, now it's okay when you go to the other side and you juice the baseball, so these guys that aren't using PEDs can go ahead and hit the baseball out. Just doesn't make sense. Seems very hypocritical to me. And it just doesn't make sense. We're a couple of minutes away from having Neil on. He should be joining us momentarily right now. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I check that way. All right. For those of you still following, the Lightning are trailing 6-4 with 9.5 minutes left in the third period. And that game is in Tampa, so that would be a big, big loss if they do not come back in this game. I believe McElhinney is in the goal. Yep, he has had 20 shots on him, and 14 of those shots have gone in. So not a great night, kind of missing Vasilevsky there in net. So as soon as we get another update on that, we will let you know. Now it is my great honor, thrill, and pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to bring in the pre- and post-game host for your Tampa Bay Rays. Let's go ahead and bring in Neil Solondz. Neil, how you doing tonight, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, Neil. Guess what, buddy? It's right around the corner. Thursday, 2 days away, 3 days away. Pitches and catches are reported. Time for you to get even busier than you already are.
Yeah, it's going to be different, though. I'm glad that we're back, and I'm glad that there's baseball. It's definitely going to be different, and it's going to be a very, very unique season, that's for sure.
We talk about it being unique, Neil, but I don't think it's going to be as unique as it was last year. They're still talking, based on everything goes as planned, 162 games. I mean, the big difference, of course, is going to be spring training where they're only playing certain teams within a certain radius of themselves. But as far as the games go, Major League Baseball says that they plan on doing everything basically as normal as possible, with maybe the exceptions of having full capacity in the stands?
I mean, at least from what I've seen, it's going to be vastly different to this point. I mean, they've talked about, the ability to have shortened games up until 2 weeks out of the regular season. You won't have minor league camps open, which normally you would, and have additional players on hand. That's significantly different. You have a capacity in terms of number of staff that are allowed. They're probably going to have to spread the workouts out. There's no media allowed in actual attendance until full workouts begin, at least on the 23rd, and that would be the earliest. So, for all of those reasons, it's obvious, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. There are certainly a lot of concerns, it should be, and they're going to take a lot of precautions, as they should be. So, I think as excited as we all are, the focus is flexibility, and the ability to understand things can change at a moment's notice. I mean, you saw that last year with the Major League season, with the challenges the Marlins had, the Cardinals had, and, with players or teams allowed to carry up to 75 players during the course of spring training. You have to imagine that there are going to be issues with most teams because, throughout most of the country, there's still issues, obviously, with COVID.
Now, you talk about this pitching staff, Neil, and, it was just about a week ago, we were like, what are we doing? We lost Morton, we lost Snell, we still need to solidify this, and we knew something was going to come down eventually. We had that feeling. Well, we knew we got Chris Archer already, and then we added 41-year-old Rich Hill, who has a winning record as a pitcher, and then we got Colin McHugh, who is an unbelievable pitcher that can do both start and relieve. Let's first talk about the loss of Morton and the loss of Snell and the impact on this team.
Well, I mean, both guys obviously were tremendous for the time they were here. I mean, Charlie in a shorter period as a veteran, his clubhouse presence, his ability to pitch in the postseason, tremendous value. Blake is a guy who grew up in the organization, winning a Cy Young and coming through. I think those guys are hopefully going to have successful years. But I also think that the Rays, from the standpoint of trying to do this year, is really not replace either guy with one individual. They're trying to do it with a group. And I think part of that is the unique year we have. You're going from 162 games to 60 games to 162 games. And it's hard to believe the pitchers are going to go 50 to 200 down to 60 or so, and then back up to 150 or 200 without risking injury. So, I think what you're going to see, not only with the Rays, but probably across baseball, is by and large, teams carrying a lot of pitchers that work 100 to 150 innings during the course of the year, and having a group of those guys is probably the best way to try and battle through a very unique season before guys maybe build up to more normal numbers in terms of inning totals next year.
Now, when you add Yarbrough into this equation, and of course Glass now, this pitching staff for the Rays is not really as bad as everybody makes it sound. I mean, this is a pitching staff that has, and remember, we put Hunter Strickland in the minors right now. We signed him to a minor league contract, and he comes from a winning tradition. Rich Hill comes from a winning tradition. And, of course, Colin McHugh. They've all been there. They've all been to the playoffs. Isn't that big for a team like the Tampa Bay Rays when you have that clubhouse presence and you lose two guys that have been come to the playoffs, but replace them with other guys that have been there?
I think that's important. Michael Wacha obviously has playoff experience.
That's right.
He did that earlier in the offseason too. I think more than that is each of these guys, and the Rays have been great at this, is finding guys who create different looks with their style of pitching, different looks with the kind of stuff they feature, different looks with angles, the differences between righties and lefties. Rich Hill is much more of a fastball curveball pitcher from the left side. McHugh does it from the right side, but they do it in different ways with different velocities. Walker's more of a power pitcher. Chris Archer, more fastball slider. Glass now, obviously, fastball, big breaking ball. Yarbrough uses the cutter heavily. And I think what the Rays do really well is not only from game to game, but from pitcher to pitcher, is change the look that a hitter is going to see. And, I think a lot of people forget that the game really is about hitters trying to find timing and pitchers trying to disrupt it. And the more different looks you can give a hitter, the harder it is for that hit timing. And I think the combination of the different kinds of guys the Rays will have will still allow them to be a very effective pitching staff, regardless of the team they're facing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But, you also look at the depth in the infield and outfield. It's just incredible. And we're not even talking about the minor league guys yet, but I'm talking about, I feel you got to find a place for Mike Brousseau. I mean, the guy constantly is hitting, getting big hits for us, but we are deep in both the outfield and the infield. Somebody's going to have to be the odd person out. Could that possibly be World Series hero Brett Phillips?
I don't know. For me, it's always too early to start speculating as to who does and who doesn't make, an opening day roster, right, or who's the odd man out. I figure generally things are going to work themselves out. Injuries are going to happen during the course of the spring, especially coming off such a unique year. And we still don't even know. I still think I wouldn't be shocked if an agreement came down to expand the rosters to 28 players again. Right now it's a 26-man roster. Last year it was 28 all season. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again and they expanded the rosters. At the same time, if it doesn't, the Rays will be well prepared for that eventuality if it stays the same. And again, injuries are going to play a role in this too. And I think the more depth you have, the better off you're going to be. And I think that especially is the case this season, probably more so on the pitching side than the hitting side. But I think, the Rays are that last year used close to 50 players. In the upper 40s they were. And 2 years ago when they won 96 games, they used 57 players and 34 pitchers. So they're going to use their entire roster. And a lot of guys who will be in spring training will likely get the opportunity.
Let's talk about a couple guys specific, Neil, that you know all very well. First of all, let's talk about World Series hero Randy Arozarena. I mean, how much pressure after a guy comes off a performance like that, a very young guy, is there on this guy to produce even more after what he did in the World Series?
I don't think from a Rays perspective they're going to put extreme pressure on him to perform. I don't know what goes through an individual's mind in terms of the challenges they pose for themselves. A lot of people have asked me, what do I hope or expect from Randy? He's not going to, you can't expect him to hit 60 or 70 homers, which is the kind of pace that he was on in terms of his production. But if he gives you 20 to 30 homers, if he drives in 80 plus runs, and he gives you an 800 plus OPS, and he plays a solid left field in addition to DHing, that's probably better production that you were on pace for in terms of what you got last year. And as long as he does something to that nature, I think he's going to be a very good player for the Rays. If you forget the postseason, just to September, his OPS was over 1,000. I think levying those kind of expectations, that's kind of more in Betts Trout territory for a full year. I don't think that's reasonable to expect that. If he has a great year and he's, as good as he was in the postseason, that's wonderful. But I think reasonable are probably the numbers that I'm talking about.
Now, last year, and I really have a problem judging anybody on that performance last year because of the unique season, but Yoshi Sasago, people don't remember that not only did he have to deal with COVID like everybody else, but he was also transitioning from living in one country to living in another country and didn't have what you or I would call a remarkable year. I know he did hit 8 homers. You got to give the guy and understand that, hey, last season was a unique year. How much patience are they going to have with Yoshi this year? And will they have it till the end of the year?
Well, a lot of what the Rays do is going to be based on performance and also who's ahead and behind a certain. In Yoshi's case, I think he handled himself extremely well considering all the circumstances. And sometimes his numbers, probably if you look under the hood, were a little bit better. He didn't chase a lot out of the strike zone. He was well better than league average. His hard hit rate was a lot better than league average. So from that end, he ran into some tough luck. And I think he certainly is capable of more. And it's not only the fact that he's in a different country, but baseball culturally is very different in the United States than it is in Japan. So he was trying to learn a new country, new pitchers, new style of baseball, all in the midst of a pandemic, and in a short and truncated season as well. It probably would have been a lot to ask of any individual in any field, forget just baseball. So, I think he's certainly going to get chances, and hopefully he's able to produce.
Now, one of the big questions we heard all off season is, are they going to trade Kevin Kiermaier? Are they not? And my question to you is, forget about, we all love Kevin. We all love what KK brought to the table. It's been a great Ray, but do you think there's a certain point where the Rays have to make a decision so that they can get back the most possible value for Kevin? Because, the last 3 years, from an offensive standpoint, he's been slipping. If you look at his averages, he's gotten some key hits, but I'm talking about overall throughout the an entire season. Do you think that they're going to go out and look to see if something is interesting for Kevin? Or do you think, he says he wants to be a Ray the rest of his life?
I don't think the Rays necessarily look to shop a player as much as they do look to improve the club. They value defense so much, and I don't know if the rest of the league values defense as much as the Rays do. I think KK's value in the postseason was tremendous. So it was not only his defense, but actually his offense was very, very good. He was probably one of the better hitters for the Rays in the World Series against the Dodgers. And you remember that he was hit on the hand by a pitch against the Houston Astros, and he battled his way through it. And I think I don't look much, you talk about the last 3 years, I don't look much at last year just because of the uniqueness of the season. And I look at the year before, his first 4 months actually were pretty good. And then he robbed a home run in San Diego. And after that, his offensive numbers tailed off. And I usually think when his offensive numbers go down, that something is wrong with him physically. He never makes an excuse for himself. He comes to play. He's a tremendous individual in the clubhouse. I'd love to be able to keep KK. I don't think the Rays move players just to move players. I think they do it because they think the combination of who they can acquire, people look at the Blake Snell trade. It's not only who they acquired in that deal, but what the deal allowed them to acquire in free agency and in other moves. And I think when any player that they move, they're looking at that big picture. So, it's an answer. I don't, the Rays generally don't, as from a front office, don't speculate on individual players. We'll see how things go, but I would anticipate, at least at this point, that KK would be here to start the 2021 season.
Now, everybody's wondering, Neil, and I actually even have a fan here that wanted me to ask you, which I was going to bring up. We know sooner or later the emergence of Wander Franco at the big league level is going to happen, whether it's later in the year or maybe not even the next year, whatever. But the question comes up, how do you see him fitting into this ball club? He's a shortstop. You got Willie Adames. Brandon Lau plays second base. It's a good problem to have, but when the time does come, where do you see Franco fitting in?
It's hard to say because it's not only him, but there are a lot of other talented young players who are on the come. Taylor Walls is a guy that, I've heard so many good things about. And he's a kid from Florida State who plays shortstop as well, but he also can play second and third. And they worked Wander out at second and third last. And they had Brandon Lau playing some third base this spring. That's the plan. And he can play corner outfield too. And Vidal Brujan is a talented middle infielder who they're also teaching to play the outfield. And I think one thing that the Rays have been good at is that, they've been able to find guys who can play other positions and maximize their roster. I think the uniqueness of the players they have coming up, the three names I mentioned, Walls, Brujan, and Wander Franco, is that all three of them are also switch hitters. Where in the past, you look at guys who've come through the Rays system, they've hit from one side of the plate or the other, and they've had to run a lot of platoons. If those guys can hit from both sides of the plate, it really makes it a lot harder for teams to match up against them with pitchers in terms of how they set up their staffs. And I think that's kind of exciting because all three of those guys are athletic, speedy, higher contact players. You've heard so much talk in the game about increasing the ability to make. I think the Rays have done a good job of acquiring players who have the ability to act in hard contact. So we'll see how it plays out. I figure they know the players better than anybody, and they're going to make the best decisions to, make the team better in the short and the long term.
Now, if there's one thing about the Rays that concerns you, Neil, going into the 2021 season, what is it?
I think it's for all teams. It's health. It's health from two areas. It's health being able to keep your pitching staff upright because of, the move from 162 to 60 to 162. And it's also health from COVID and how that impacts a team. The Rays were, I guess, somewhat fortunate last year. They had, 6 players at the beginning of summer camp that eventually we found out did have COVID at some point in time. During the regular season, they didn't have any. But what happens to your club if you have something, and especially in a 6-month season, where, more things can happen, like the Cardinals or the Marlins or, the Phillies? How many double headers are you going to have to deal with in a month where maybe your schedule already isn't easy? How are you going to deal with those kinds of challenges? And for me, those are the things that I look at. When do those, maybe not if, but how well can you limit it? How well can you keep your team together through all of it? And how well can you battle? Because I certainly think the talent is deep enough to be a postseason team for a third straight year, which would be the first time in history the Rays would have done that if they get to the playoffs again.
Yeah, Neil, if you look at this team from the position, if you take the pitching just out of it for a minute, I'm talking about the skill positions out there. You look at it, and they really didn't change anything from a personnel standpoint. We lost Hunter Renfroe, but after that, we lost a couple of pitchers. But as far as infield and outfield, we're pretty much fielding the same team. Is it safe to say that we did last year?
By and large, yeah. I mean, a lot of it will depend on when the youngsters, what happens when the youngsters are ready. And Randy Arozarena is now a full season player. I think, Manuel Margot hopefully is much more settled. He had a terrific postseason last year. And obviously he also dealt with the death of his father due to COVID in all of this too. So, I would think he's geared up for a very good year. I think, you've got Willie Adames back, you have Brandon Lau back, Ji-Man Choi is back, Yandy Diaz is back, Austin Meadows is back. I definitely, if you look at how they were for the 2-month season and you don't know how it would have played out over 6, they were a team in the top half offensively. And I think with so many young players, there's room for much more growth, and getting Randy a full year can also help. I think he can be a top third of the league in terms of offense, maybe not, like a top 5 or 6 team, but a top 10 team. And if they do that to add to a very good pitching staff, I think they'll be very, very good.
And, still, Neil, and I know we don't care because, we're used to it, but the media still doesn't give this Rays team, even after what they did last year, they still don't look at them as necessarily being a top performer. And I don't know why it is, because you're pretty much, like you said, pretty much it's the same team, except for a couple of pitches. I don't know why it is that every year it seems like the media doesn't give the Tampa Bay Rays a chance.
Well, I think last year, a lot of people believed that the Rays were going to be good because of the uniqueness of the year and how they handled their team. I do think that some of the national narrative is fairly positive. I mean, I read Ken Rosenthal and Saris and from The Athletic, and they seem to have a pretty good feel for what the Rays are going to try to accomplish from a pitching standpoint. And I think there's a general belief that regardless of who's on the roster, the Rays are going to be a competitive team. I think the difference is probably many of the names, because the Rays usually have a very young club, are maybe not as household as you look at New York and the Judges and the Stantons and the Garrett Coles of the world now. Or, you look at, let's say the Astros, they still have Correa and Altuve and Bregman. much more household names, maybe more all-star appearances. And sometimes because of that, maybe on a national level for some, that leads to more attention or maybe a higher level of credit. I think the Rays have always been a team where, they may not have the best 1 through 5 top players on a team, but if you look at 1 through 20 through 40, 1 through 55, however many players they need, that's where their edge is that the drop off from player 1 to player 40 is not nearly as great as it is for other clubs.
A couple more questions and we'll let you run, Neil. Talk about the American League East. I know the Red Sox, they got rid of Benintendi now. So, they're still struggling a little bit. But it looks like besides the Yankees, the Blue Jays have an amazing team. Maybe a little bit starting pitching. They need a little bit more. But when you look at that lineup of the Toronto Blue Jays, it's got to be scary for the opponents.
I think Toronto, from a lineup standpoint, is much improved, and probably the addition of George Springer and Marcus Semien also made them better defensively. People don't probably realize that in a 2-month season, the Blue Jays, at least from most metrics, were near the bottom of the league in defense. I think they're going to be much stronger in the middle with Semien at second base and Springer playing probably more center field than he does corner outfield, at least, at the beginning of this deal. I think that's going to help them. I do think the starting pitching is a little bit of a worry. If you look at their ace, Hyunjin Ryu, he's been more of a 20-start guy than a 30-start guy in a full season on average. Can he make 30 starts? I'm not sure. Nate Pearson, who's got tremendous stuff, hasn't been a guy who's thrown more than 120 innings. How many innings can he throw this year? And you can kind of go through the starting staff in those regards and have the same questions. So what's the formula for them for 1,450 innings? I actually think, even though, Boston traded Andrew Benintendi, they've made some interesting moves and added a fair amount of depth of pitching and tough. And obviously, I think the Yankees are going to be the team that the Rays, would see as the chief group that they're going to have to battle with in the AL East. They added in Kluber and Tyone, but they also lost Paxton, Happ, and Tanaka.
Yeah.
So, I think for all teams, the question is going to be pitching health and how you divide your innings. And I'm really interested to see, throughout the division, how they stack up. And part of it also is when you're facing other teams. You could face, let's say, the White Sox at a time where they're dealing with a bunch of, makeup games because of COVID or, so let's say something happens to a team and now you face them and they're playing 10 games in 8 days with a couple of double headers. Well, that may be the best time to face them. Later in the year, you may get them and they may be in a great spot. I think the American League, the East is going to be very good. I think the league is going to be much more balanced than it's been in a while. So there are not going to be as many easy teams to face as maybe there were, a couple of years ago where you had maybe a little top heavy and bottom heavy.
Now, Neil, before I let you go, I have to ask you this, as you being a sports broadcaster and everything. I mean, you got the Rays, they go to the World Series. You got the Buccaneers, they win the Super Bowl. You got the Stanley Cup champion Lightnings. You have the Rowdies who went to the championship game. It was canceled. And if you even want to throw in, as of today, the USF women's basketball team is now ranked number 12 in the nation at the latest poll. I mean, how great is it to be a sportscaster in the city of Tampa Bay right now?
I would say more than a broadcaster, if you're just a sports fan. If I kind of think back to the 12-year-old kid in me, because I think that's probably that sweet spot, that age of between 8 and 12 where you really got hooked on sports. I mean, if you're an 8 to 12-year-old and you're hooked on sports in the area, you're probably going to, grow up living and remembering all the teams from this generation and growing and that will grow and grow. And I think it's awesome. Tremendously proud of what the teams, all the ownership groups, all the front offices have done in really trying times, especially proud of the one here, with the Rays, obviously, since I worked there, and just excited for what the future can bring, because obviously I think, all of the franchises are on really solid ground, really solid footing.
Yeah. Well, listen, Neil, I want to thank you so very, very much. I wanted to catch you before the season starts because I know how difficult it is once the season begins. But I do want you to go ahead, and I know you're starting back up on WDAE. I think I heard you. I don't know if it was last week with I don't know if it's called This Week in Baseball, what you exactly call it on WDAE. But why don't you let our fans know, that way they can make sure to listen to you.
Sure. We have a Countdown to Opening Day show that'll air this week. It'll be noon on Thursday, and then we replay it as a podcast. And then after that, we air on Saturday and Sundays a half hour before the Rays games on the weekends, all the way up until it almost acts like a pregame show, all the way up until the regular season. So hopefully that'll give people a good taste of what's to come for the Rays, and we chat with players, coaches, management, just to give people a glimpse of what's to come this season.
All right, my friend. Well, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on Frankly Speaking Sports tonight, and good luck in 2021 with the Rays.
Thanks again, and thanks for having me.
All right, be safe. That was Neil Solondz, the pre- and post-game host of your Tampa Bay Rays. We have about 10 minutes left in the show, folks, and this is the time, as you all know, on Mondays, I love to open up the show. Anything you want to talk about, don't be afraid to get on the phone or leave a comment here. We're going to do our best to answer it for you. I mean, if you want to talk about the Rays, we can talk about the Rays. If you want to talk about the Lightning, we can talk about the Lightning. Whatever you like to talk about. And for those of you following the Lightning, tonight they lost 6-4. It's the last 2 out of 3 they lost to the Florida Panthers by the final score of 6-4. Volkov with 2 goals. I think Stamkos and Johnson had a goal as well for the Bolts. But a tough loss as the Lightning now move to 10-3-1 on the season, and the Panthers move to 9-2-2. So not the way we wanted it. 2 out of 3 we wanted the Lightning to take, but unfortunately didn't happen that way. But that's sometimes the way the ice goes, and we'll come back, and I'm sure we'll win our next game. But Neil Solondz, you got a good feel of what's coming up on Frankly Speaking Sports. I want to let everybody know that tomorrow night we'll be on our USF platform. So those of you that are USF fans, join us on Bullseye. That's capital letter, 2 words, Bullseye. And we'll have our show at 9 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Then on Wednesday, we'll be back on Frankly Speaking Sports, and of course, Northeast Streaming Sports as well. We will have former Major League pitchers. We'll have 2 interviews on this upcoming Wednesday. Pedro Boborn, who was a big-time pitcher for the Atlanta Braves during their World Series years. Also the son of former Cincinnati Red, Pedro Boborn, will be on with us, followed by Steve Traskell, who also pitched for the Cubs, the Mets, has been to the World Series, has pitched in playoffs. Both these guys have pitched in the playoffs. So Pedro Boborn and Steve Traskell will be with us Wednesday night on Frankly Speaking Sports, beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then on Thursday, we will have Seattle Mariners field coordinator, that's Seattle Mariners field coordinator and former Major League Baseball player Jared Sandberg will be joining us Thursday night. We're booked all the way through March right now, folks. We have guests every single night lined up for you on Frankly Speaking Sports. So you want to stay tuned. We're going to be a lot of baseball. We're going to continue to try to get more hockey and more basketball players on as well. But lots and lots of baseball over the next month as spring training pitchers and catchers report this Thursday. And then the following Thursday, full teams, full squads are reporting. So baseball is here, folks. Season begins. I believe it's April 1st, pretty much. So that's pretty much a month, 6 weeks away till first pitch in opening baseball season. So we're looking really, really forward to that. Once again, if you want to give us a quick call, I see plenty of people on different platforms. I see YouTube is real busy right now. I see Facebook Live, go ahead, give a call at 813-922-9810. We'll get you on quickly before we leave here. If you have any questions that you want to ask us in regards to any sport, anything you might like us to talk about, we'll be more than happy to go ahead and do that for you, as we got about 5 minutes left in our show. So don't be shy. Go ahead, give us a quick call. As I look at some other messages here, seeing if there's anything I did not answer earlier in the show, but we got baseball coming up, and it's a great time of year, folks. Baseball's coming up, hockey's going on, basketball's going on. Hopefully March Madness, will go on as planned. We'll see what they do with that and how that's all going to work out. But there's less than 2 weeks left in the month of February. February is a fast month, and then let me tell you something. It's going to go real fast during March before baseball season starts. 162 games. They're planning on doing, the difference is going to be spring training, like Neil said. How they do spring training, maybe shorter games and things like that. And, one of the great points that Neil mentioned is, you guys had a 60-game season last year. The teams that didn't make the playoffs, they played 60 games, they were done. Now you're telling them to get ready for 162 games. So you went from 162 down to 60, back up to 162. And there's that's all within a couple of year period here where you have to strengthen the body back up, get the right stamina. And a great point by Neil is whether they'll allow the rosters, it's, a lot of people go, well, it's only 28 people to 26 people. It's a big deal when you're playing a 162 game schedule. Those two extra players, whether it be an extra pitcher or an extra utility player, is a big deal. A lot of other questions are going to be answered during spring about these young guys, Walls, LeBron, Wando Franco. A lot of these guys, they got the #1 farm system in baseball, the Tampa Bay Rays. And if you didn't hear, it broke, I believe, yesterday or the day before that. Now each team is going to have one AAA, one AA, one high A, and one low A minor league team. So it's going to be, that's the way they're going to break down the minor leagues this year. And I would assume going forward. So once again, they have 4 teams. They have a AAA, AA, high single A, and low single A. That's how baseball is going to be this year. So for those of you that did not know that, you do know that now. So I do want to let you know that. But, we already have such great baseball. Just so you get an idea, folks, next week already, we have planned, and I won't give you the days right now because I don't want to confuse you, but besides Pedro Babone, besides Jared Sandberg, besides Steve Traskell this week, we already got Kevin Mitchell, Jack McDowell, Brian McRae, and Doug Sisk already booked for the following week. So we got some amazing people. And for those of you Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans, we also got next Wednesday, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer Ernest Graham is going to be joining us. So we have a lot of different interviews, different players of different positions that will be joining us over the next couple of weeks. A quick reminder that besides Frankly Speaking Sports group, Facebook group, we are also on YouTube channel. You can find us under Frankly Speaking Sports or Northeast Streaming Sports. And you can find me on Twitter at Larry Frankus with the US at the end. Want to also let you all know that we now are on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, just to name a few, under Northeast Streaming Sports. And then you look down to Frankly Speaking Sports. I want to thank Neil Solondz so very, very much for joining us today on Frankly Speaking Sports. And I also want to thank everybody who took their time out of their busy schedule to watch our show tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with our USF show Bullseye on our Bullseye platform starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. To everyone, good night.